All right, we're going to turn it over to Joshua Scott. He's going to share with us, and then we're going to hear from our new athletic director, and I'll introduce him in just a moment.
On this side of eternity, my grandpa Clark is my hero. He was a pastor in southwestern Missouri his entire life. His actions backed up his words. I was his first grandchild. When I was born, he prophesied that I would be a preacher too. What I appreciate most about Grandpa is that he wasn't perfect. One of my favorite memories was of my brother Gabriel and I at 8 and 10, respectively, along with Grandma rushing to get into his 1980 Capri Classic. It was Sunday, and we were late for church. Grandpa jumps into the driver's seat and throws it in reverse, and as he hurries to back up, the driver's side mirror gets caught against the casing of the garage door and knocks it off. The first two words out of his mouth were, king of the cuss words number 2. My brother and I were stunned. We had never heard him say anything like that before. We were as stunned as Grandpa and Grandma were probably embarrassed. When we pulled into the church parking lot, he turned around to face us in the back seat and he said, "Boys, what I did and what I said was done out of anger. I'm sorry. I'm asking for your forgiveness." I had never had an adult ask me for that before. After service, I remember walking away and being so proud of my grandpa. I was thankful that 2 people got to come to know the Lord. But even more, for me, that I had someone in my life who showed me what it was like to do something wrong, own it, and ask for forgiveness. Grandpa Clark died when I was 19 years old. I had never led anyone in the salvation prayer to accept Jesus. His prophecy of me following in his footsteps hung around my neck like a dead weight. You see, I didn't want to be a preacher. I wanted to be a teacher. I felt guilty because I couldn't live up to the calling that Grandpa had proclaimed over me. I was his oldest grandson. He was my hero, and somehow I was letting him down. I started teaching 24 years ago. I love teaching theater, and now I adore teaching future theater teachers how to teach. 2 years into my first high school gig in Caldwell County, North Carolina, I met up with our children's youth pastor for lunch. And I shared the weightiness and the shame of not following through on my prescriptive pastoral path. Jonathan's remarks forever marked me. He said, "Josh, you see your students every day in class. You do 8 productions a year. You rehearse with your students 4 to 5 times a week and go to tech days on Saturdays. In youth group, I'm lucky to see them a couple of days a week and maybe get to hang out with them for a week over the summer. You've got kids coming into your light and sound room to ask for prayer. You're living the life and your students are constantly watching. Dude, you are fulfilling your grandfather's calling." I had never had a friend share a truth that liberating before. It felt like chains being broken. I was 43 years old and directing a show in New Braunfels, Texas, and a student who was one of the leads of our show came up to me at the end of rehearsal. She was of German descent, a tough cookie to crack, and so honest it hurt. She asked, "You have something I don't understand. You love us with a love that my parents have a hard time showing. You talk about Jesus all the time. You pray all the time. I don't know this Jesus. How did you come to know him?" And you know what? I forgot every single word of the prayer that I was supposed to lead her into. Every word. I'd never done it before. So you know what I did? I told her my story of how I came to faith, how my grandpa motivated me to follow Christ, and how Pastor Jonathan helped me to see how my job in theater can be a holy calling. What am I getting at? These are all true stories of who I am. Allowing our salvation stories to be a part of the discourse with our students is an effective way to live out faith in front of our students. Yesterday, Dr. Horn's message, his arrow hit the mark. My brother championed to all of us in here to be Jesus to our students. That's what we do at North Greenville University. That's who we are when we are at our best. Sure, in the theater department, we love exploring stories. We teach our students how to mine for kingdom principles in the stories we choose to tell. We highlight principles of grace in the stories of our heroes. We insist on telling the truth, both the good and the challenging, when we approach the antagonistic miscreant who is bent on moral anarchy. We preach to our students not to walk into a room of actors and try to be interesting. The smarter play is what Jesus did, walking into the room and being intentionally interested in everyone else around him. There are numerous ways to bridge our faith with our calling as storytellers. I began with a narrative of my grandpa, and now the story comes full circle. I've been married for almost 28 years. As of June 23rd, all three of our kids are out of the house, and gratefully, they're saved, married, and healthy. But I've got to say, empty nesting is weird. I have to learn how to woo my wife again. That's in addition to us welcoming our first grandchild in April. To be quite frank, I am more than a little freaked out about this grandpa gig. In fact, I'm more nervous about it than auditioning for a show or selecting a cast for a production. So I asked the Holy Spirit for wisdom to know how to deal with all of this change and transition. And I go to my wife. The Holy Spirit speaks through her to me a lot. And I tell her my doubts and my fears. How am I going to do this? And she says something profoundly wise. Fellas, I don't know about you in here, but I married way the heck up. Gina looks at me and she says, just be Jesus, Josh. It worked for our kids. It'll work for your grandkids too. I hope to encourage you as I leave you with this. Stay in the Word, live it out, and just be Jesus, because it'll work for your students too.